Thank you for clicking on the video. And here on Nerdmimic, I'm going to present you a small little adventure that might be fun to run on Halloween night. Now, to be honest with you, I don't run games or play games on Halloween night. I go out or have fun with my kids nowadays. But certainly for Halloween season, this might be a great adventure to run, and it can take place in a single session. Now, you might be a little bit confused why I have this accessory in front of us, a combat shield, which basically is a dungeon master shield, but you can see on the second line, there is a mini adventure, mini module within. So here, the dungeon master screen has all the tables you need to run combat for basic and expert adventures are included on this durable screen. However, there's also a module within. The title is The Treasure of the Hideous One. An expert mini adventure for character levels 4 through 7 is also included. So that's what I'm going to review today. Now, before I crack this open, I do have a free giveaway for a Halloween themed board game going on right now. I'll put a link down below. And if you're new to the channel, welcome. We like to do a lot of board games, Dungeons and Dragons, and other nerdy things. So thanks for listening to that. So let's take a look at the shield itself. I'm going to put this adventure to the side first. I'm not going to go over all the tables here. I just want you to be aware of a couple of points. First of all, it does have this weird art piece off to the side. I wish they did not include it or put a different table in, or even if they had no additional table to put, just leave it blank and maybe move these tables up. It just looks a little bit weird. The other thing you should be aware of, when they print these combat screens, this is not the only screen I have, but the ink or the paper or both, it's not necessarily the best quality. The ink sort of bleeds, or maybe the paper's not acid free. You can sort of see it coming through, the discoloration. Okay, and that also goes on this side. Now, I don't know if you can see on the camera, but the screen also has this yellowish color coming through, and that's not necessarily from age per se, that's from the ink. Now, I have other screens that have tables that are printed on white, and that's more obvious. This one's a little bit less noticeable because it's off-white or beige, but yeah, they just don't stand up well to the test of time compared to the modern Dungeon Master screen. So just be aware of, if you're ever looking for this, you're not going to find a perfect one. They're all going to have this yellow discoloration. And not only that on the screen, but it comes off onto the white booklet within. You can see this white booklet's also turned yellow and yellow. And as you know, if you've seen the stuff I present on my channel, I keep it in pretty good condition, but this is not the fault of me. It's more the fault of the ink and this screen paper. All right, so anyways, let's move on. So here is the actual adventure booklet. It's pretty short, I guess about 6 pages short. So I'm gonna, of course, go over all the details of this adventure, so be aware there are gonna be heavy spoilers. So let's go back to the cover here. The artist is Jeff Easley, and none of the pictures here have to do with anything within the actual adventure. None of these creatures are there. It's too bad, because I think this adventure is pretty fun, and certainly you could do it as a one-shot adventure. Now, it's not perfect. There are some problems, and I'll go over problems with the adventure soon enough. So how do you use this adventure? Well, basically, the main plot hook is a treasure map. Not so much as a map as it is a story. You can see here, this is what you're supposed to hand out to your player characters. This just goes to the first problem of this adventure. It's really dense to look at. It's not fun to read all this out loud or have your players read this when you're trying to introduce an adventure. So basically, this veteran's tale relates a story of a failed expedition to find some treasure. One of the colonels of the expedition, Entos, have a disagreement with the leader Grisbaldos, and basically they lose a lot of people along the way, and they decide to get rid of Grisbaldos, and they hang him. So Entos is now the leader of this expedition. They encounter a couple of villagers or villages and find that the treasure is somewhere close by, and they go off to nab the treasure, but they're never heard of again. And so basically that is the summary of this little short story. And there are some landmarks within this story that you use as a map to find the treasure. So that is the point of that. I'd rather have it maybe a little bit more simplified and give them an actual map just to speed things along. Now let's crack this open. There is a small little map here denoting what was summarized in that story, but they probably could have just pushed this on a parchment, and you could, as the dungeon master, it's up to you to tailor the adventure to your needs, but certainly I probably would hand this out instead. Okay, so the object, of course, is to find this lost treasure. There are 4 treasures they list here as a possibility. There is a normal treasure and a magical treasure, which includes a sword of +3. There's a combined treasure, which has a lot of gold along with a ring of regeneration. And more interestingly, and also disappointingly, is a special treasure. And this is called the Essence Orb of Trinkla, the Black Sage. So it is a semi-transparent stone sphere that pulsates with living darkness, and it sits on a pedestal. Now, this orb essence has the power to answer 1 question a month per character, unless the question cannot possibly be answered. There is a 50% chance that the answer is absolutely correct, and a likely chance that the answer is absolutely incorrect. So I don't even know how that would be a treasure. That would be infuriating to go through this adventure and have something that is really useless. It's not even cursed, it's just sort of useless. So I probably wouldn't include that and substitute that out. Okay, so that's another thing I don't like about this particular adventure. And I think that's about it. Everything else I think is wonderful. So there's my 2 main quibbles, is the treasure and the hook to start the adventure, that long drawn out tale here. But everything else is cool. So let's get to the meat of the adventure. Before we get to the actual start of each encounter room, there are possibilities for wandering monsters. I think this is pretty fun. There is one involving a sunken lair of the Hydra. And here for the dialogue text, let me see if I can flatten this down for you guys to read. So we have the sunken lair of the Hydra. The sound of something lumbering and slithering rises ahead. Small branches and reeds snap as the sucking plop of large feet draws slowly closer. Birds squawk and take wind. Suddenly, a loud splash echoes off the river. All is still again. So as the characters walk along the riverbank, they might see the heads of 5 crocodiles bobbing in the water. But if they're very observant, they will notice that these heads are sort of synchronized in watching one character. And of course, just from the title, you already know that these are not crocodiles, but they're heads of this 10-headed Hydra. And so they will sort of attack from within the water, giving an illusion that there are crocodiles, not this big Hydra. But of course, when there's an opportunity, the Hydra will come out, or if he's injured enough, he'll come out of the water, and you can see that they are fighting this large dragon-like creature. So I just sort of think that's a very cool setup to meet this Hydra. The next wandering encounter here are mud beasts of the swamp, and this involves a giant serpent weed. So this is a carnivorous plant, and that is one of the new monsters here. And here is the stat block for that. So that's something additional you could add to future campaigns, this serpent weed. Okay, so this first encounter here is Grisbalda's grave. And so this will be the first location that your player characters will run into. And basically, they're going to be walking along this river bank, and some pale light will float by, and they will encounter the ghost. So that is one way to get the Halloween mood started. You have a ghostly appearance from this character. Now, this ghost, if he touches one of the player characters, the player character will be blind and deaf and can't move and paralyzed, and will just repeatedly ask the phrase, "Where is Entos?" So he will be sort of like catatonic in this way, except saying this phrase repeatedly for about an hour. But they could also talk to the ghost. Now, the ghost will also ask, "Where is Entos?" Now, if they ask if the player characters ask the ghost more specific questions, like what happened to your troops, he will mention, the Hydra or the serpent reed. So he can actually give you details about that and of upcoming problems that they encounter along the way. However, after an hour of encountering the ghost will demand a holy oath of the characters. The ghost insists that the characters must find and slay Entos or face its eternal haunting. If the characters do not take the oath or they break it, the ghost follows the characters for the rest of their lives. The ghost cannot cause physical damage, but its appearance may be an embarrassment or cause danger because, you can't hide stealthily if you're rogue and whatnot. And I know sometimes in modules they don't mention that this can happen or ghosts will do this, but it's sort of cool that they specifically state this. So I do like that touch. Now, he doesn't actually say specifically here how he died, but there is a description of his physical body where his head is rolling to one side and there are thick rope burns around his neck. So he was hung. Okay, so now that you know that the ghost wants to get rid of Entos, the other thing you should be aware of that when the traveler gave this veteran's tale, this is assumed to be about 100 years ago. And you can see that right here. So he says, you got to kill Entos, but, if Grisbalda's is human and you assume also Entos is human, well, how could that be? He's probably dead. How can you kill him? Well, that gives you a clue as to the nature of Entos. So I'll leave that little seed in your thought process, and you can imagine what's going to be later. So let's move on. So the second encounter here involves a bandit's plane. And here they're going to encounter a demonic-looking humanoid that rises up from the long grass. His body is swathed head to toe in thick black polished armor and black studs. The creature's face is held tight in a menacing leer, and it holds a glittering black blade. So it gives you the illusion that they are encountering a demon, but it turns out this is actually an elf bandit, and he is accompanied by 35 other brigands that you would have to fight. So they also have an interesting encounter where the riverbank has some dry brush, and if anyone casts a fire spell or has a flame sword or whatnot, the grass is going to catch fire. However, the chieftain has a ring of fire resistance, so he will hide within the fire and cast spells from within, and that might cause your player characters some trouble. So that's a cool little encounter. The third encounter is called the Sloth of Despair. So here, when they enter the swamp region of the map, suddenly a piercing scream bursts from the heart of the blackness. The reeds explode into a flurry of life as swamp birds shoot up towards the dark sky. So the scream will also ask for help, and lawful characters here will feel compelled to go back. So even if they search the area a little bit, they might not find anything, but then the lawful characters will feel compelled to return back to the location and search even more. And it turns out that there's no one to save. There's no, for example, siren or any hag that is making them do this, but it is a curse of sorts. And so to get rid of that compulsion for lawful characters, you got to remove a curse spell or something of that nature. So anyways, that's sort of a little scenario. I don't recall seeing this in any other adventures. Player characters might search high and low for a monster that you would think would be causing this, but it's just actually a curse. Maybe you could assume it's placed by the ghost itself, or perhaps one of the magic users on the expedition. So the next encounter is a burned village, and here they will encounter some ghouls. For this second village here, they will be shot at by arrows, and if they try to encounter the villagers that attack them, they will give up relatively easily. If they question the villagers or the chieftain there, they will learn they're really scared of one individual, and if pressed for description, his description will match Entos. So that's also a curious little tidbit, right? So let's move on. And next is the Isle of Entos. And you can see a depiction of this island here. And also you have Entos' house. So the chieftain will point to the master of the village. And when you have player characters enter this area, they will find a well-maintained cabin. And they will encounter a person that matches the description of Entos that is in the back here. And so they might assume that maybe this is a descendant of Entos. In fact, he will say that he is a relative. But if they are very observant, your player characters, they will notice some odd features. For example, there are no windows anywhere in this house. If the characters ask why, Entos claims, sometimes there are dangerous beasts that must be kept out. There are no fireplace, fire pit, or other type of cooking arrangements. If the player characters questions, Entos explains, all my cooking is done outside where it is cooler. There is no food in the house. Entos tells the characters, I have very few supplies and they do not keep. Also, in this house, there are no mirrors. If the players ask why, Entos explains, I do not know how to make them. So I think you sort of figure out the nature of Entos just looking at this. But yes, he is a vampire. So he uses the villagers as a food source. And of course, he's happy to use the player characters as a food source as well. Vampires is the theme of our board game giveaway. I'll put a link down below for that if you want to win that. So if you're watching this from the future, I'm sure we have other giveaways going on, and you could click our main channel page for that. Vampire will do his best to eat and take out your player characters, but he will enjoy a intelligent conversation and try to attack them when they're least suspecting. Now, also close by to this village is a slave farm where all the people are enthralled to him, charmed basically, and he will try to charm repair characters as well. There are coffins. They are basically large stone urns. It states here specifically the first one that they encounter, if they spill it over, they'll find some dirt in it. And there are multiple other ones, and you could assign randomly which one is his actual coffin. So maybe the player characters can sort of guess his nature and attack him at night. That's one way out. So next to this village and the slave farm and Entos' house is a large cave structure. And this is where the actual treasure is. And Resentos actually knows about this, but he does not trouble himself with the treasure, as he knows it's well defended. So he doesn't care about the treasure, right? He just cares about being safe and have a steady food supply. But if the player characters take out Resentos or just sneak off and just go straight for the treasure, this treasure is guarded by a new creature. It's called a K-Men. And the K-Men are small, intelligent reptilian humanoids. They are related to lizardmen, though they are much smaller. So I guess you could think of them as like pygmies of lizardmen. So there's a whole bunch of them, 25 of them. But if they are able to defeat them, as well as the shaman, they will acquire the treasure. It's supposed to be a hard battle. However, there's a one way out. If the player characters go there first to the treasure, the shaman will actually try to ask them if they could get rid of Resentos, because they do not like him as well. They call him the big bad man-o-man, and you have to assume that maybe he is catching some craymen as a food supply. And so the shaman does not like that. And if they are able to take Resentos, the shaman is happy to give them the treasure as a payment for their good deed. So this is and that's it. And so this is a cool little mini adventure they could run. I think it'd be great and perfect to run on Halloween. You know, you got a ghost to start off with, you got ghouls, you got a vampire, all these classic Halloween type creatures, all wrapped up in a small little story. So the only bad thing is, as I mentioned, would be this long thing to read. And then the treasure, I think you could just tailor it to yourself. There's certainly this special treasure with this orb that doesn't really answer questions too well. I would substitute that. So that has been our look at this AC2 Combat Shield and Mini Adventure, with a mini adventure titled The Treasure of the Hideous One. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought about this little mini adventure. Would you run yourself? Did you ever play yourself? And what treasure maybe you would substitute in there? So thanks for watching, everyone. Hopefully you had fun going over this adventure with me. Have a great evening and keep on adventuring out there.